For 20 years, I lived in fear of sugar. Not of sweetness itself, but of the silent damage it was causing inside me. Every time I felt dizzy, every time my vision blurred for a few seconds, or my heart raced faster than normal, I knew something was wrong. But the worst part was that despite the medications, strict diets, and all the recommendations I followed to the letter, my sugar levels kept doing whatever they wanted. My mornings started with a finger prick and a number that dictated how my day would go. Sometimes the numbers were so high that I could barely leave the house for fear of fainting on the street. Other times they dropped so low that I felt the ground moving beneath me. I lived on a tightrope, trapped between the fear of it rising and the fear of it dropping too much. I went to doctors, specialists, tried new treatments, and although some helped for a while, nothing lasted. I felt imprisoned in my own body, as if every cell was begging for help, and I didn't know how to give it. Until one day, a very special person told me about an herb, one that, according to him, had helped control his levels without so many ups and downs. At first, I thought it was just another home remedy everyone recommends, but does little. However, there was something in his gaze. It wasn't enthusiasm. It was calmness. And that, for someone living with sugar spikes, is worth more than any promise. So I decided to try it. Without many expectations, I prepared it and took it for 5 consecutive days. What happened afterward left me speechless. My levels dropped more than with any pill I had taken before. And the best part was, I didn't feel side effects, fatigue, or those sudden drops I feared so much. Today, I want to tell you what herb it is, how I prepared it, and above all, how it changed my life. Because if you are also tired of living in fear, this might be exactly what you were waiting for. But before we start, I want to know a little more about you. How old are you, and from which country are you watching me? Write it in the comments. I'd love to read you. CAG. It wasn't overnight. Sugar doesn't announce itself with shouts. It arrives as a whisper, a slight tiredness you attribute to age, a thirst that seems normal, a vision that suddenly blurs and then clears, as if nothing happened. And you let it pass, because you don't want to exaggerate, because you think it's part of natural wear and tear. But it's not. I remember the first thing I noticed was exhaustion. At any hour. I slept well, but woke up feeling like I hadn't rested. Climbing a flight of stairs left me breathless. I struggled to stay awake during the day. Sometimes, while talking to someone, I felt myself slowly fading, as if the internal battery was running out. Then came the thirst. Constant, unbearable. I started carrying a water bottle everywhere. I drank, and minutes later needed more. There were days I drank more than 4 liters. But no matter how much I drank, my mouth stayed dry. And at night, I woke up every 2 hours to go to the bathroom. It was an exhausting cycle. Vision was what really scared me. I remember being at the supermarket and seeing the price tags as if submerged in water. I blinked and they cleared, but then the fog returned. I didn't say anything immediately. I was embarrassed. I thought maybe it was the glasses or the light or fatigue, but deep down I knew something was wrong. Finally, I went to the doctor. They drew blood. I waited for results without much anxiety, as if I already knew what was coming. And yes, it was confirmed. I had prediabetes. They gave me a list of forbidden foods, a prescription to walk 30 minutes a day, and a pill. I left hopeful that everything would change, but it didn't. On the contrary. 6 months later, I went back for a checkup. This time, the results were worse. It was no longer prediabetes. It was type 2 diabetes, chronic, permanent. I felt defeated. From then on, my life became a control panel. Everything revolved around what I ate, when I ate, how much I walked, how I slept. I became a slave to my glucose meter. Every reading was a sentence. If it was high, I felt guilty. If it was low, I was scared. I tried different diets, the glycemic index diet, the no-flour diet, the no-fruit diet. I tried everything. Sometimes levels went down, but shortly after they skyrocketed again. And with each new adjustment, I lost a little more joy. I took medications that made me nauseous. They prescribed me a new one, then another, a daily cocktail. Some left me so tired I could barely get up. But I kept taking them, because I had no alternative. To those who asked how I was, I said, fine, controlling sugar. But inside I knew it wasn't true. Sugar controlled me. I felt like I was slowly shutting down. Not physically, but inside. As if each day took a piece of me. A part of my energy, vitality, and will. And it was at that point, just when I thought there were no paths left, that Herb appeared. A simple recommendation that at first seemed harmless, but ended up opening a door I didn't even know existed. Go. The herb no one had mentioned to me. It was an ordinary afternoon, one of those when you expect no surprises. I had gone for a walk in the neighborhood park, part of the routine doctors recommend to keep sugar under control. I walked slowly, dragging my feet more than I liked to admit, when I ran into Ricardo, an old childhood friend I hadn't seen in years. We greeted with that awkward hug only old acquaintances with more past than present share. We sat on a shaded bench and started catching up. He looked at me for a moment, with an expression mixing curiosity and concern, and asked, "How are you doing with the sugar?" I told him everything. The diagnosis, the medications, the energy crashes, the dizziness. He listened silently, nodding occasionally, like someone who's already walked that same path. Then, with a calmness almost provocative, he said, "I was the same, until I found a plant that changed my life." I looked at him, skeptical. I thought he'd talk about a new pill, a cutting-edge treatment, or a miraculous operation. But no, he talked about an herb, a plant his grandmother used in infusions when a family member was sick, one that, according to him, helps regulate blood sugar naturally. I listened respectfully, but inwardly said, "Another one, another remedy that sounds good, but does nothing." Still, something in his tone made me doubt. It wasn't empty enthusiasm, not that exaggerated sparkle of someone trying to sell a magic solution. It was serenity, calmness, as if he had made peace with his body, and that plant had something to do with it. That night, I searched the name he gave me. I was surprised to find it was neither a myth nor a rarity. It was a plant used for centuries in various cultures, in infusions, powder, even ointments. Some called it the natural insulin, others the leaf that balances blood. I read university studies, testimonies from older people, forums with real stories. A 65-year-old woman shared how her levels dropped in 2 weeks. A 70-year-old man talked about reducing his medication. There were stories of hope, but also warnings. Not everyone reacts the same. It doesn't replace traditional medicine, and consistency is key. I found myself wondering how no doctor had mentioned it before, how something so simple could be so close, and yet so hidden. Maybe it's because there are no big labs behind it, because you can't patent a leaf, because it doesn't make as much money as a box of pills, or maybe simply because over time, we've forgotten that nature also knows how to heal. The next day, I spoke with Ricardo again. I asked him to show me the plant. He took me to his home and gave me a handful of dried leaves, carefully stored in a glass jar. "Take it with respect," he said. "It's not magic, but it is powerful. And if your body is ready, you will notice it." I still had doubts, but for the first time in years, I didn't feel desperation. I felt curiosity, and that, for me, was a small victory. Chegg. My first attempt with the herb. It took me a few days to decide. Though desperate to feel better, I carried years of disappointment. I had already tried so many things promising relief, but only leaving frustration, that my trust was worn out. Besides, I'm not one to jump in without looking. So before my first infusion, I talked to my doctor. I told him what Ricardo said, showed him the plant, the articles, the studies. To my surprise, He neither mocked nor dismissed it. He said that as long as I didn't stop my current treatment, I could try it. Some people had noticed benefits. The body reacts differently in each case, but if done carefully, there was little risk. That was the push I needed. The next day, I got up early. It was a Tuesday. I prepared the kitchen calmly, as if I were about to cook something sacred. I boiled water, took some dried leaves from the jar, and let them steep for about 15 minutes. The smell was strong, earthy, almost bitter, but not unpleasant. It reminded me of those herbs our grandmothers used before pharmacies were on every corner. I drank it silently, not as a remedy, but as an act of faith, a small ritual. The first cup didn't cause anything strange. No dizziness, no warmth, no immediate effect. Just that countryside flavor, root, living earth. It felt honest, no chemicals, no strange names. During the rest of the day, I noticed no big changes. But that night, I slept better. I don't know if it was the herb or the peace of doing something different. I woke once to the bathroom, instead of 3 times. And for the first time in weeks, I didn't feel that heaviness in my chest upon waking. My body hadn't changed yet, but my mind had. The second day, I repeated the routine. Water, leaves, rest, cup. I started feeling less anxious about food. I can't explain it, but it was like my body was more balanced. I measured my sugar before lunch as always. The numbers were still high, but slightly lower than the day before. I thought it might be a coincidence, so I didn't get my hopes up. The third day was different. I felt more energetic. Not like a young man, of course, but enough to walk a little further without getting breathless. And strangely, that afternoon, I didn't need my usual short nap. For the first time in months, I didn't fall asleep in front of the TV. I also noticed my mouth wasn't so dry all the time. I drank water out of habit, but no longer desperately. And my hands, which used to feel swollen in the mornings, were lighter. It was like my body started working more smoothly, with fewer shocks. The fourth day, I checked my sugar before dinner. It dropped even more. This time, it couldn't be coincidence. It was a trend, a direction, and that gave me something I hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. It wasn't a miracle cure, not an overnight transformation, but it was a change, a small turn in the right direction. And that, for someone who's battled this disease for years, is a huge gift. The morning of the 5th day, I sat by the window, cup in hand, watching the light come in, and that's when I felt it. Inside, something had ignited. It wasn't euphoria, not exaggerated joy. It was something deeper, serene calm, a quiet intuition telling me I was on the right path. It was the first time in years I felt real hope. The 5 days that changed everything. I never thought 5 days could make such a difference. At first, I took this herb with curiosity, not blind faith. But what happened in that short time changed my body and my view of health forever. Day 1. I started with no expectations. The infusion had a strong flavor, with a bitterness that at the end turned almost sweet. Mid-morning, I felt a slight lightness in my body, as if the usual weight in my legs had softened. Measuring sugar before lunch, I saw a small drop. Nothing miraculous, but real. It was below what I usually saw at that hour. I noted it down, not getting my hopes up. Day 2. The second day was more interesting. Upon waking, I no longer had the unbearable dry mouth that accompanied me each morning. My fasting level dropped a bit more, not drastically, but consistently. I started seeing a pattern. Walking that day, I felt more balanced. And most curiously, that night I slept through without waking. I didn't get up to the bathroom. I didn't toss and turn. I just rested, like I hadn't in years. Day 3. This was the turning point. I woke before the alarm with energy I no longer recognized as mine. I prepared the infusion with more enthusiasm. It was no longer just a test. It was becoming a habit my body demanded. Measuring sugar after breakfast, I could hardly believe it. It was within the recommended range, for the first time in many months. I didn't need to lower it. I wasn't on alert. I was normal. That day, I cooked without feeling tired, walked a few extra blocks, even fixed some plants I had neglected. My daughter called me in the afternoon and said, "Dad, your voice sounds different. Did something good happen?" And I said, "Yes. I feel alive again." Day 4. The 4th day confirmed that something real was happening. My sugar levels no longer spiked after meals like before. No dizzying highs nor shaking lows. I felt stable, aware, more connected with my body. That day I even skipped a sweet craving without feeling forced. Not out of fear, but because I didn't need it. Day 5. This was the key day. The day everything consolidated. I woke early, no leg pain, no heaviness, no dryness. My first fasting level showed a number I hadn't seen in years. I barely recognized it, thought the meter was broken, restarted it, tried again. The number was the same. It was real. In that moment, I had a mix of emotions hard to explain. Joy, of course, but also a slight sadness. For all the time lost thinking there was no other way. For all the days I thought this was simply my fate, and I had to resign myself. That day I sat in front of the mirror and said, "You still have a chance. You can still get better." My glucose meter couldn't believe it, and neither could I. It was 5 days. Just 5. Not a cure, nor a definitive solution, but a beginning, a restart. A reminder that the body, even after decades of mistreatment, has an immense capacity to heal, if you give it what it needs. And sometimes, what it needs doesn't come in a pharmacy box. It comes as a leaf, a root, an infusion, silently, without promising miracles, but with results you can feel, measure, and that give you hope back. 1 week after starting the infusion, I decided to schedule an appointment with my primary doctor. Not because I felt bad, but quite the opposite. I felt so different, so far from what my normal had been in recent years, that I needed confirmation. Something that didn't just come from my glucose meter, but from a professional's eye. The doctor greeted me with his usual seriousness, asked how I was, and for the first time in a long time, I replied, "Better than I expected." I told him I had tried an infusion of an herb recommended by a friend, and in 5 days my levels had stabilized more than they had in the last 6 months. I didn't try to convince him of anything, just shared the facts. He looked at me with some skepticism, but without disdain. He took my notebook where I recorded my daily sugar readings, flipped through the previous pages, full of high, disordered, worrying numbers, then looked at those from the last week. He was silent for a few seconds, looked at the values again, frowned, as if reviewing something that didn't fit. "Haven't you changed your medication?" he asked. "No, doctor. Same dose, same schedule. I only added this infusion." He ordered an urgent blood test to compare with last month's results. At the lab, they drew blood as always, but this time I felt something different. Not nerves, not resignation. I felt I was going to get good news. And so it was. 2 days later, his secretary called to tell me the doctor wanted to see me again. I went to his office, and he sat across from me with the printed results. He placed them on the table, pointed with his finger and said, "Your levels have dropped considerably. They're not just better, they're within the ideal range." I looked at the papers again, couldn't believe it. In such a short time, without changing anything but adding an infusion, my numbers had dropped to levels I hadn't seen since the disease began. "What do you think?" I asked. He shrugged, almost smiling. "It's surprising. Sometimes the body responds when we least expect it. There's no single explanation. But if it's working, keep at it. Just stay in control, and keep recording everything, like you have." I left the appointment without running, because at my age one doesn't run anymore. But inside, I swear I was running. It was like a weight I'd carried for years was lifted off me, Like someone told me, "You're not doomed. You can still have quality of life." I'm not saying this herb is miraculous. It's not. It hasn't cured my diabetes. It hasn't made me 20 years younger. But it has given me something no medication had before. Stability without punishment. Improvements without side effects. And above all, peace. Because when you live with a chronic illness, it doesn't only affect your body, it gets into your mind, your emotions, your daily life. It makes you more fearful, more limited, and anything that gives you back some control is pure gold. Now, I'm not here to tell you to throw away your pills, nor ignore your doctor's advice. No. What I want to tell you is that some things are worth trying, that not everything is in pharmaceuticals. Sometimes the solution starts with a conversation, a dried leaf, a steaming cup that seems insignificant but can be the first step to something better. I'm not saying it's miraculous, but for me, it was the closest thing to a miracle. Tech. How to prepare it step by step. Now it's time to tell you everything about this herb that, no exaggeration, changed my life. It's not a secret, nor something hidden in the jungle, nor a magical lab formula. It's a simple plant, used for centuries in various cultures, known for its properties to naturally regulate blood sugar. For obvious reasons, I won't mention any brand or company, but the name I knew it by was balance leaf. That's what Ricardo's grandmother called it, and many in his village still do. Its real scientific name you can easily find if you search for plants that help control glucose. Some know it as gymnema, others as banaba, and some even confuse it with moringa. But don't worry, you don't need Latin to start using it. The first thing you should know is this leaf doesn't grow in every garden. That's why the easiest way to get it is at natural health stores or herbalists. There are also trusted online places where you can buy it dried, ready to prepare at home. Just make sure it's pure, without blends, no added sugar, no strange preservatives. The simpler, the better. If for some reason you get it fresh, you can dry it at home. It's very easy. Just need a dry, ventilated place, no humidity or direct sunlight. Spread it over paper or a clean tray and leave it for several days, turning occasionally. When the leaves are completely dry and crispy, store them in an airtight glass jar, away from heat and moisture. Now, to the preparation. The most effective way to take it is as an infusion. Here are the steps I follow every morning. Boil half a liter of water. Once it boils, turn off the heat. Add 1 tablespoon of the dried leaf. Cover the container and let it steep for 15 to 20 minutes. Strain and keep in a clean bottle. You can drink 1 cup on an empty stomach, another before lunch, and if you wish, a last one in the afternoon. The taste, as I told you before, is quite strong at first, but you get used to it quickly. If it's too bitter for you, you can add a few drops of natural lemon or a cinnamon stick piece. That doesn't interfere with its properties and even gives a pleasant touch. Now, there are some important warnings. Don't combine this infusion with hypoglycemic medications without medical supervision. If you're taking diabetes pills, inform your doctor that you're using this plant. Dose adjustments may be necessary. Don't drink it excessively. Natural doesn't mean without effects. 3 cups a day are more than enough. Don't mix it with very sweet or ultra-processed foods. This not only reduces its effectiveness, but can cause unnecessary imbalance in your levels. If you're pregnant, breastfeeding, or have kidney or liver problems, consult a professional first. Like everything in life, this plant doesn't work miracles if not accompanied by consistency and small changes in your daily routine. Eating cleaner, moving more, sleeping better are pieces that must work together. But this leaf, believe me, can be the spark that ignites that change. My final advice is this: don't abandon your medical treatment, but give nature a chance. Sometimes the simplest things work best, and when you find something good for your body that doesn't harm it, the least you can do is listen and appreciate it. Chai. Although I started with the infusion, over time I discovered this herb can be taken in many different ways. The important thing is not how you prepare it, but that you do it consistently and respectfully for what your body needs. I'll share what I've learned over time, and what other older adults using it have told me. Besides the classic infusion with hot water, some prefer capsules. They're easy to find in natural health stores. Convenient, especially if you have a busy day or are out of the house. The most common dose is 1 capsule twice a day, always with some light food. Just make sure they're pure, without strange mixtures or artificial additives. Read the label carefully. Another very useful form is powder. You can add a small teaspoon to natural sugar-free juice, a smoothie, or even plain unsweetened yogurt. Some older people tell me they mix it with oat water or warm plant-based milk. In all these forms, it's important not to mix the herb with overly sweet or processed foods. Its job is to regulate sugar, and it can't do that if you pour 3 tablespoons of honey or a soda on top. I've also heard of an even simpler method: crushed leaves sprinkled over salads or soups. The flavor is intense, but in small amounts not bothersome, and can be part of a healthy meal without noticing. Now, it's not just about taking it and waiting. If you want this herb to do its job, there are certain foods to avoid during the process. The most interfering are white flours, bread, cookies, non-whole pasta, added sugars, desserts, sweets, sugary drinks. Saturated fats and fried foods hinder digestion and unbalance the body. Excessive alcohol alters liver function, which is key in sugar regulation. On the other hand, if you combine the herb with natural foods like leafy greens, lean proteins, whole grains, and low glycemic fruits, like green apple or pear, you'll notice more stable and lasting results. Also, there are simple activities that multiply the positive effect of this plant. You don't need to run a marathon or join a gym. Small daily actions like walking 20 to 30 minutes in the morning or afternoon, doing deep breathing exercises upon waking. They help oxygenate the blood better. Keeping regular meal schedules, avoiding late dinners, and if you can, and your doctor allows, fasting for 12 hours between dinner and breakfast. That really helps keep glucose from spiking overnight. Now, I want to say something very important, not directly to you, but to your children, grandchildren, those who accompany and care about you. To those who have seen you tire, rise slowly, sometimes struggle to remember things or walk with pain. If you're listening to this and your mother or father lives with diabetes or pre-diabetes, don't wait for them to worsen. Don't wait until they lose sight, or are told they need a finger amputated, or can no longer leave the house alone. Don't let your mother or father suffer if they can still try this. It's not expensive, it's not risky. It doesn't replace medical treatment but can complement it. And most importantly, it can give them quality of life. In this noisy world, sometimes we forget to listen to the simplest solutions. But believe me, this herb can be the start of a new chapter. Don't let it go unnoticed. Other ways to consume it, plus useful tips. After my first days taking this herb as an infusion, I realized not everyone has the time or routine to prepare tea daily. And that's okay. The most important thing is to find a consumption method that fits your life, not the other way around. Fortunately, this plant is versatile, and there are different ways to integrate it easily. One of the most popular is capsules, sold in herbalists and natural health stores. Practical for those who travel, work outside, or just prefer not to deal with boiling water and straining leaves. Just make sure the product is good quality. Check the label. It should contain pure plant extract, no unnecessary additives or fillers. The usual dose is 1 capsule in the morning and 1 in the afternoon, always with some light food. Another very useful form is powder. Perfect to mix with natural sugar-free juices, plain yogurt, oats, or even a glass of warm water with a few drops of lemon. Just a small teaspoon, no more. Some mix it in their green smoothies in the morning with spinach, cucumber, and green apple. That not only improves taste, but also enhances its effects by combining it with foods that favor sugar regulation. For those who enjoy tradition, the infusion is still an excellent option. You can prepare ½ liter in the morning and keep it in a thermos to drink throughout the day. You can even refrigerate it if you prefer it cold in summer. If the taste is too strong, a pinch of natural cinnamon or a lemon peel can soften it without altering its properties. And for the more creative, some use crushed dried leaves as a condiment in small amounts on soups or salads. It's important not to overheat it or boil it directly with food, as that can reduce some of its active effects. Now, for this herb to really work, it's not enough just to take it. You also have to avoid certain foods that sabotage its effect. The worst offenders are refined sugars, cookies, sweets, industrial pastries, white flours, common bread, pasta, white rice, sodas, even those labeled light, trans fats, packaged snacks, margarines, commercial fried foods. The cleaner your body is, the more effective the plant will be. And it's not about eliminating everything at once, but about making conscious daily choices. Also, some activities surprisingly boost the effect of this herb. The most recommended are gentle walks of 20 to 30 minutes a day. No need to run or sweat like at the gym. Just walk, breathe deeply, move a bit. Mild, intermittent fasting. For example, dinner at 7 in the evening and breakfast at 7 in the morning. Just 12 hours without eating, which gives the body time to balance. Drinking water during the day. Hydration helps the body better process food and natural supplements. Sleeping well. Sounds simple, but it's one of the greatest allies for sugar control. And now, I want to speak directly to you, who may be listening not for yourself, but for someone you love. Maybe your mother, maybe your father, that older person who has always cared for you and now needs your help. Don't let your mother or father suffer if they can still try this. Sometimes older adults resign themselves. They think it's no longer worth trying something new, that it's too late. But you, who know them, know they still have moments to live, that they deserve to wake up without dizziness, pain, or that constant fear of what the glucose meter will say. Help them. Prepare the infusion for them. Buy them the capsules. Accompany them on walks. Because the most powerful thing about this plant is not just its effect on the body, but everything it can change in the heart when someone believes again that improvement is possible. Check. Not all remedies are in pharmacies. Sometimes they're in the earth, in a simple leaf, in a forgotten root, in a tradition passed quietly from generation to generation. For years, I thought the only way to treat my sugar was with pills, medical checkups, and an eternal feeling that something was about to go out of control. I lived in fear. Fear of symptoms, of dizziness, of losing sight, of a wound that wouldn't heal, of a night that wouldn't end well. But when I discovered this herb, something changed. Not immediately, no fireworks, but in a deep way. I felt accompanied by nature. I felt part of something older, wiser, something that doesn't seek to cover the symptom, but helps the body find its own balance. And if you're listening to this now and struggling with your sugar levels, I want to tell you something very important. You're not alone. There are thousands, millions of people like you who wake up each day controlling their levels, writing down numbers, fearing what the next test will say. People who no longer know what to eat, what to avoid, what to do. Who feel trapped between conflicting advice, endless recipes, and a constant sense of frustration. But I want you to know this. You can always start again. No matter how old you are, no matter if you've had this diagnosis for a week or 20 years, there's always something you can do to improve. One step, one cup, one small decision that doesn't demand you give up everything. Just try. I'm not telling you to stop anything. I'm just telling you to start something. Start with an infusion, with a walk, with a good night's sleep, with a simpler meal, with a conversation with your doctor where you ask about this plant. Start from wherever you are, with what you have, and above all, start believing it's possible. And if this message touched you in any way, if you felt this could help you or someone you love, I ask a very simple favor. Share this video. Share it with your family, your friends group, that coworker living with diabetes who's already resigned, your neighbor who no longer goes for walks for fear of imbalance, your aunt, your father, your grandmother. Because sometimes, the only thing we need to change course is to hear a story like this, a real story, told from experience, without magical promises or hidden interests. And if you feel like it, leave me a comment below telling me how old you are and from which country you're watching. I love reading them. It makes me feel that, even if we're far apart, we form a community of people who don't give up, who still believe in the natural, who still believe in the body, who still believe in life. Thank you for staying until the end.
Thank you for listening.
And above all, thank you for believing it's still possible.